Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FitCommit podcast. Our purpose here on this podcast is to help personal trainers improve their success as it relates to client retention, client compliance, and much more. And that is for the purpose of creating a more fit world on the client side and creating a world where clients get the results that they're looking for. So the client is happy, the trainer's happy, and everyone's happy. And we're going to continue exploring the psychology of compliance, which we started in our last episode with Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And so in the last episode, we just provided an overview of how that book can apply to fitness. And the main idea there was that fitness is ultimately a compliance issue. And the personal trainer, for example, is, according to Cialdini, would be a compliance professional, like a salesperson or a account manager at a company, etc. So these are all compliance types of professions. And we see, after reading that book, we realized that, wait a sec, personal training is actually very much a compliance profession. And this book, and Cialdini, is the number one authority on the topic. And so no one's covered this yet. And so that's why we really want to cover it, and we want to cover it well, and we want to cover it chapter by chapter. So we're going to start off with chapter one. And chapter one introduces the concept of the fact that we humans, and actually many other animals, operate on automatic behaviors and automatic decision making in most cases. And that's especially true for us humans nowadays in this very busy, fast moving world. We can't stop and carefully analyze everything. We often have to rely on shortcuts. And that's the main point of this first chapter. But we'll go over it sort of chapter by chapter, insight by insight. So throughout the chapter, there's probably about a dozen case studies, examples, anecdotes, and we'll go over it in that fashion. So Cialdini starts off this chapter with a very interesting example where a jewelry store owner was struggling to sell some of her jewelry, and so she asked her team, "Hey, cut the price by two," or in other words, half the price. They accidentally misread it as double the price. So they doubled the price on the website and the signs and the promotional advertising. And what's interesting is after they doubled the price, everything sold out, which is kind of crazy. How did that happen? Well, the way Cialdini explains it is that this is an example of where we often use shortcuts, heuristic shortcuts. And in this case, I think most people listening know that the shortcut is, if it's expensive, it must be good quality. And so if it's cheap, funny enough, in English, the word cheap not only means low price, but it also means bad quality. So that's why this worked really well for her. And this actually made me think, relating it back to helping fitness trainers, perhaps they could apply this to their pricing strategies. Andrew, how do you think this could be applied to pricing strategies?
Yeah, I guess it could apply in the same sort of way. The cheaper, so to speak, personal training sessions people would apply automatically associate with lower quality. And then same sort of thing in reverse. You see a personal trainer charging double the amount, you're just going to think, oh, wow, they must be so much better. So you could definitely apply it. The thing is, you just need to be able to back it up as well. Yeah, look, the jewelry thing, how can we say? So like jewelry is jewelry. It's, gold is gold kind of thing. Whereas, if you're charging double the price of every other trainer, but you still suck as a trainer, it's going to be pretty evident pretty quick. But yeah, I think, if you're able to back it up, you could definitely use this and make a couple of extra bucks. Why not?
Okay, super. And another sort of pricing strategy that I realized reading that chapter one was, so there's a study where they found that when you go buy a car, they have all these extra options that you can spec it out, add bigger tires, leather, whatever. But when you add all those things up, they add up to a much higher amount very quickly, right? So your car might go from 60K with a few of those additional options. So what's interesting is they found that car dealers who quote every item one by one actually sell the features, whereas car dealerships that just add them up and then tell them the price difference, they don't perform as well. Whereas if they go one by one, hey, these extra tires are an extra $500. Do you want this? Yes. Check. Now they got them, right? So how do you think that could be applied to fitness?
It could be something to do with like the package that you're selling or the service that you're selling. So an example could be, okay, you just like purely the training sessions in the gym with me, it's this much. It's like, if you want me to write your programs as well, it's going to bump up to this much. If we're going to do the nutrition as well, it's going to be this much. If you want outside the gym support, text me and I'll give you some feedback, it's this much. So maybe that could be the way they do it. Example, base rate for an hour in the gym is $100. If you want the nutrition plans along with that, it works out to be $110 per session. If you want the training plans, $120. If you want the support after that as well, it works out to be $130 per session. So that might be an idea of how they could do it.
And maybe instead of saying, hey, if you want the nutrition, it's 110, just say, hey, if you want the nutrition, it's an extra $10 per month. And then you're like, well, $10 per month, that's nothing. Yeah, let's add it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay, awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome. All right, good stuff. And another interesting example that I found from there was the they did a study where if you ask someone for something, for example, the example they actually used was a photocopy machine. So it's a photocopy machine. It's busy, but some guy jumps in and interrupts and says, "Hey, I need to use this photocopy machine. Can I use it for just a few moments?" Most people say no, because they're busy using it. But if you say because, the word because, if you give a reason, it makes it 90% of the time they said yes, you can. But what's interesting, so if you say, for example, but what's interesting, your reason doesn't even have to be that good. You could just say, can I use this photocopy machine because I'm in a rush to a meeting? Yes, you can. But what's interesting is, and that's not that good of a reason. But furthermore, you don't even have to provide a reason. You just use the word because. So you can say, hey, excuse me, I need to use this photocopy machine because that also had the same effect. So I found that quite interesting how powerful it is to give someone a reason or the perception of a reason, or at least letting them know that there is a reason why you need to do this. In fact, if we look at kids do this to us adults. They'll come and ask us for something, and they'll just say because. Hey, like my kid might come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, can I have some candy?" Because they actually do that. They don't give the reason. They just use the word because. So funny enough, that actually works for adults too. That actually works in between adults. And so that made me think, like when I use a lot of fitness apps, and they always ask you to do something. For example, do you commit to your next workout? And I say yes, because I'm often I just follow the program. But it would be much more effective if they ask you to do something and then give you the reason, right? Like, hey, you need to make sure you don't miss any workouts this week because if you do, it'll undo the progress we made, for example. What do you think of that? Is that something that, from what I see, a lot of trainers are not doing that. Even a lot of fitness apps are not doing that. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think we've spoken about this a couple times a while back. So in my years doing all of this, I noticed that the education side of things really helped with the compliance side of things. How do you say? I didn't need my clients to be up to my levels of knowledge on certain topics, but it really helped. And I think this sort of pretty much applies in the exact same way. So for example, it's like, I want you to do, I don't know, let's say it was 2,500 calories, this much protein, this much carbs, and we pretty much say this because, and then I would explain the reasons why. We're doing this because we need this amount of protein to keep your muscle there, so you're not going to lose any muscle because you're dieting. You're going to need this amount of carbs to give you enough energy. You're going to need this amount of fats to keep your hormones going, et cetera, et cetera. And the same sort of thing with the training program. I just really found the compliance just shot up massively when they understood why they needed to do what they're doing. So I'm not sure if this sort of works in the same psychological way as the because thing, but it kind of is. Like, you are explaining the reason, this is the program, but I'm not just giving it to them. It's like, we're doing this because blah, 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 got to do the squat this way because, X, Y, Z. So yeah, it definitely works in my experience. And I think it's the same thing for me. Like I notice for myself, I am very, very disciplined with my own training. And, if something's super, super difficult, even if it's not in regards to physical training, let's say it's something in regards to business, I am very disciplined with it, but I'm way less compliant if someone just says, go and do this, and I have no idea why. I'm way more compliant. Like if you can explain the reason why, and I can justify it with my logic as to why I need to do it, I'll get it done. So yeah, it might just be maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe that's how it works. Like, oh, there's a reason. I can make sense of this reason. Okay, no worries. I agree with this. So maybe that's how it works.
Yeah, I think providing a reason is very powerful. And in the corporate world, that's what I do as well. When I ask them what to do something, I say because this is why we need it. This is the impact. This is the bottom line impact. And then you're much more likely to get compliance. But
Do you think it could be something to do with, say, it's perceived as an order when there's no because, and maybe people are just resistant to the order. So it's like, hey, go and do this, And they sort of
Yeah.
feel like you didn't even bother to explain it to me. You just want me to
Yeah.
do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that. Maybe it's got something to do with that as well.
Could be interesting. Yeah, could be because of that. But what's interesting is, the reason doesn't matter. There just has to be a reason, right? Like just using the word because apparently, according to these studies, worked. So it's so easy to provide clients a reason. You don't have to go and do a 10-page analysis on why they need to do something, or even a long paragraph. Just tell them one sentence. You know,
Yeah,
just
all right, like I'll give you an example. There's a million things I could talk about. All right, just let's say okay, so there's a rare sort of exercise, if you want to call it that, like training the front of your shins, if that makes sense, the muscle there, like dorsiflexion. So most people train calves, but they won't train the opposite movement, and that can potentially lead to shin splints because the back side of your lower leg is strong, but the front side of your lower leg is weak. So because it's such a weird sort of exercise to do, like a lot of people tend to be resistant. Like, why the hell am I doing this? This looks so weird. But yeah, the reason could literally just be as simple as, same sort of thing as what I remember in the past. It's like, oh, we're doing this because we want to keep your lower leg balanced. Backside's going to be strong. We want the front side strong as well. That's it. Like they don't need to read a 10-page dissertation on dorsiflexion and tibialis anterior. It's just, oh yeah, makes sense. Keep the muscles balanced. Cool. Let's go.
yeah. And you know what? I'm currently using a sort of online fitness app program where the trainer creates a program for me and kind of adjusts it week to week, every couple of weeks, and it sort of tracks my compliance to it, etc. But what I noticed is he randomly throws in new exercises all the time. I kind of know why I'm doing them, but he doesn't provide a reason for why I'm doing that exercise. Now, I still follow along, but there is a part of me in my head where I'm like, oh, this is new. Looks kind of weird. I don't know why I'm doing it, but okay, I'll do it. So this seems to be something that fitness professionals are not doing, and it's so easy. You just got to add one sentence to an ask or a request.
As bad as it is to say, from my experience, and again, I can only judge from my experience, and I'm not saying all of them did it. It's just I remember seeing quite a large percentage this did apply to. Is a lot of the trainers that I taught, their knowledge just wasn't sufficient. So I suppose we could make the argument there could be a lot of things that trainers give you where they don't even really know why they're doing it. Like they don't know they don't know the because. You know what I mean? So maybe
Wow.
they just literally don't know what to tell you. They're just saying. So for example, it's like, let's say it's a squat. Pretty much anyone that goes to the gym would just assume, oh, squats are good. Why? They train your whole lower body. Okay, yeah, but why? And it's like that's about all they know. It's like, okay, biomechanics and everything. Oh, I don't really know, blah, blah, blah. So maybe it could just be as simple as that. They don't know enough information to be able to tell you that because, again, not saying this applies to every trainer. And I'm not saying, squats was the first thing that came to my mind, but nutrition would definitely be a better example. In my experience, barely any trainers knew anything real world practical to actually get transformational results for clients. Like, yeah, they knew what protein was, they knew what carbs were, but they didn't really understand calorie deficit and this and that. Like to me, it seems so basic. There might be a lot more education these days, but 10 years ago, barely anyone knew nutrition when I was doing it. So maybe that's another reason it could be happening as well.
Interesting. Because I know we had previously said that the lack of program adherence from the client side isn't so much a knowledge issue because information is everywhere. It's more of a compliance issue. But although the knowledge is everywhere, ChatGPT can answer why you need to do a squat. Trainers aren't able to communicate that because they don't know directly to the client. So I think in an ideal world, whatever program trainers are using to generate exercises for their clients should have that built in. So whatever app you're using or software you're using, it adds the exercise and then it explains why. Or it explains both to the trainer why you might want to prescribe this exercise and to the client why are you doing it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the other very big factor with this is habit, and like there's many other reasons that go into it as well. But like we're talking about how things like automatic and there's triggers and responses and everything. Habits definitely play a really big part, and trying to be compliant with something that you're not used to can be very difficult for a lot of people, especially if you've never been disciplined in the past. And if you're all of a sudden trying to go 0 to 100, trying to do all of these things, I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of trainers make. It's like they ask new clients that have never trained a day in their life that aren't very disciplined physically to do all of this extra work. And it's just way too much, way too soon. You could give them all the reasons in the world. You could do, the perfect program. We need to do it all because of X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. But that client's probably still not going to stick to it because it's just way too hard for the level that they're currently at. And if there's so many things that we were talking about that are automatic, so, well, what could it be? All right, so let's say I normally finish work, I normally go home, I normally do X, Y, Z. All of a sudden, if they have to go to the gym now and do something that's extremely hard for them, and they've already used up all their willpower for the day, like how much more likely is it that that person is going to be, sticking to all of those programs? So yeah, there's definitely something to be said for starting for the level that they're at, taking into account the power of, automatic responses and everything as well. But yeah, making it as easy as possible. I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of trainers forget. Like it's like they're probably just looking at this thing. It's like, oh yeah, the normal program has a squat, a bench press, it's a full body thing, squat, bench press, rows, chin ups, lunges, deadlifts, whatever. So yeah, they're just thinking, oh, I got this program. Here's the perfect program. Here you go. Oh, why aren't you following the program? Well, you just started at like level 7 for someone that's never even looked at level 1. So it's another thing that a lot of trainers don't understand. And again, I'm not saying all of them. It's just unfortunately at least in my experience, 10 years ago or whatever, it just wasn't as good of a knowledge base in the basic things that a lot of clients actually need. Training in nutrition is one thing, but the application, the real world things, technique, compliance, there are a lot of other things that need to be taken into account as well.
So yeah, from my experience, any fitness programs I've tried, they always just throw in a really complicated, not complicated, but a workout that consists of 6 to 8 different exercises. And so if your habit is already to, go home after the gym and relax, and I have to go and do a 1-hour workout with 8 different movements that you've never done before, you would need, you would need quite a bit of willpower to do that. Whereas if he said, hey, let's start off slow, let's start off with a treadmill. So just get 30 minutes of treadmill or bike to start, and then we'll add one thing week after week after week. That I think would be a much easier new behavior to incorporate into your current behavioral sets. Although if they did that, like a client might look at it and say, well, you're just telling me to go on the treadmill. I'm paying you to just go on the treadmill.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that? Making it easy, but not making it too simple where they're like, what am I getting out of this?
So this is another thing. So the way that I got around this, I can't remember where I learned this from. I can't remember where it was from, but it was like this little sort of psychological technique for compliance. With the training program was to ask them, so, involve them in this process. Again, I've trained at just about every level I could in, multiple different disciplines. For me, as long as I understand why, and I can tell that this person clearly knows what they're talking about, and I can justify it to make sense for me, I'll get it done. Like the discipline's not an issue because I've been disciplined my whole life. Whereas for someone that's never done it before, it's a totally different story, but I understand what you're saying. The way that I dealt with it was to ask them, involve them in this process, explain all of this. So normally I used to like to do, like a welcome call or a starting call or whatever you want to call it. And part of it was like an educational section as well. So explain all the basics, everything. If you have any questions, go through the questions. And then in terms of the program creation, I would involve them and ask them, out of 10, be 100% real, like actually be real with yourself right now. With 10 out of 10, do you honestly think you can follow everything that's in this current plan? If the answer is anything less than 10, we're making it easier until we get to a guarantee. It needs to be so easy they can 100% guarantee on their worst day do it. And if they can't, we're making it easier. And then it's like, okay, and I explain to them, it's like, don't worry, we're not going to keep it this hard forever. So we'll readdress this issue next week. If you think adding an extra exercise here or an extra day there and you can say 100% again, we'll do it. If not, we're going to stick to it until you are ready for it. And then, rinse and repeat until they're at that level. And then there also needs to be the educational side of things where you're explaining to them, you're like, look, I can give you the 10 out of 10 program right now, but your likelihood of actually sticking to it long-term is very, very low. You might be able to keep up that willpower for 1 or 2 weeks, but it's very unlikely you're going to stick to it long term. And that's just being real. Again, if an athlete came to me, yeah, here's the 10 out of 10 program, no problems, let's go. But if the 500-pound overweight guy that's snacking on 5,000 calories a day or whatever, even more than that, is trying to go from 0 to 100, it's very, very unlikely. The amount of willpower he needs is just incredible. Whereas for me, Look, going to the gym, the novelty of going to the gym's worn off for me. So it's not really a fun thing, yay, anymore. It's more so it's a discipline thing. Like I just keep going on rinse and repeat. But for me, it still doesn't require much willpower because it's a really ingrained habit for me. So even though I wake up, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go, but I'm going. I'll still do it. But it doesn't really require that willpower. Whereas for him or someone that's never been there, there's so much willpower required in that in the first place. So if you're making a 10 out of 10 program, think about the amount of willpower in a 1 hour, really hard, grueling session type of program. Or think of the amount of willpower where it's 20 minutes. There's two things you got to focus on. Let's just make sure you get them done. Or even, let's just say it's a super, really bad client, really, really out of shape. It might just be, look, wake up, do 10 minutes of body weight squats, some push-ups on your knees. You're going to do 20 of each. Let me know how you feel tomorrow. And then, we might increase the amount of that or the amount of sets or something. So yeah, again, there's so much nuance to it, but like that's the general gist of how you would do it. You got to make it so easy that you're guaranteeing they're going to stick to this long term.
Gotcha. Well, that right there, I think is a very it's a very beneficial strategy for trainers. So any trainers listening, I think that's from the items that we discussed so far. I think it's probably one of the most valuable tools that they can add in their toolkit. And this is also something great for anybody who's in fitness to understand, even if they're not working with a trainer. If they're just doing it on their own, don't go into the gym and expect yourself to stay consistent. If you start too heavy, go easy. Start easy. Just get on the bike, and then once you make that a habit, add another habit. Add everything. Add every sort of additional exercise that you're doing add them one at a time as a habit. And then once you form one habit, add the next, and so on and so forth. Whereas eventually it becomes automatic. And speaking of automatic behaviors, in the book, Cialdini provided a couple of really interesting examples. I'll share one of them. So one of the early studies they did on this, on sort of the automatic behavior of mammals and other creatures too, but mostly mammals. So turkeys, the mother turkey, when she has chicks, obviously she takes care of them, feeds them, etc. But you've probably seen these turkeys, chickens. They have like a handful of chicks that they got to take care of, and the chicks they make little noises to get the mother's attention. They make a cheep noise, right? So what's interesting in the turkey's case is that behavior is so automatic that they put like a fake. The predator of turkeys in the wild is basically things like wildcats, foxes, etc. So they did a fake wildcat like puppet, and they put it up, and then they put it up nearby, and they put a little speaker on that puppet, making the cheep noise. So although that is a predator, the mother went and looked after that little cat puppet. So like these behaviors are like automatic behaviors in mammals is just incredible. And then also interestingly, chicks that did not make the cheep noise, the mother would actually kill them.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's insane how like subtle cues, once they become automatic behaviors, they're so powerful. That I thought was a very, very, very good example of that. Is there anything like that? No, well, not to that extreme. We humans don't do that. But is there a really powerful automatic behavior that you've identified throughout your experience that you think either positive or negative? If positive, people should double down on. If negative, people should be aware of it and get themselves off that automatic behavior.
Tough one. It's a good question. I'm sure there is. I'm just trying to think of something. The first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if this fully applies, but it's especially with beginners, and I don't know how this would apply to, like natural instincts or something like that. When someone's like struggling in a set, like the immediate thing, even though like from my experience, I'm like, I can see by the way they're pushing, like let's say it's a leg press or something. I can see by the way they're pushing, I can see how the weight's moving. I'm like, yeah, this guy's got another 10 reps left in. If a gun was to his head, 10 reps, no problem. But let's say it's a set of 20, let's just say, they'll get through 10 and they'll be like, in their mind, I'm done. I can't do another one. And I'm seeing how this weight's moving. I'm like, man, you got another 10 in you. You're not even close to that. So maybe it's like the closest thing I can think of is that automatic response is to quit. So I don't know if that's like a survival thing. I don't know if it's like, this is hard on my muscles. I need to get out of here. I need to not do this. It's becoming too difficult. So I don't know if it's something like that, but I've definitely like that's the norm. The exception is when someone's like so motivated, they're going to push themselves to the death. Like that's the exception. That's just like a gym freak kind of thing. But the automatic response from what I've noticed is people just want to quit straight away.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, the difficulty makes people want to quit. Yeah, I don't know if that's something similar. It's the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think there's an automatic reaction where when you get 9 reps out of 10, for example, the automatic reaction is like, okay, I've already done. I'm like your brain kind of rounds it off to just 10. Okay, I'm done. I don't want. I
Yeah.
don't need to do one more set, and they just quit. Well, I recently learned an interesting tactic that relates to this. Instead of counting your reps like from 1 to 10, or like let's say you got to do, I don't know, crazy amount of reps, like 100, right? Start off with like you start off with like, can I do 20 easily? Yes. Okay. 20, done. And then can I do this one more time? Yes. Okay. Now I'm at 40. Now at 40 you start to get tired. So now you say, okay, let me just get halfway. Can I do 10 more? Yeah, well I just did 22 times, so I did 40. So yeah, I should be able to do 10. Now you're at 50. Once you're at 50, you're like, okay, well, I'm halfway done. I just did 50. Can I do another 50? Not sure. Can I do another 10? Yes. You do another 10. You get to 60, and so on and so forth. And once you get toward the end where you're tired, you get down to like, can I do another 5? Right? Whereas if you were at like 95 out of 100, you might be like, okay, I quit. That's enough. But if you're at 95, you're not counting 95. You're just asking yourself, can I do another 5? Yeah, I just did 95. Of course I can do another 5. So that, I think, would be a good solution to that in terms of the way you count your.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember. So, like, let's say, again, use the same example. It's 10 or 20 reps or whatever it may be. I remember normally when I was at the gym counting it out, as a normal in-person trainer, you're like, all right, let's say it's 10. You're like, all right, 1, 2, 3, you go through all of them. But when you can see they're struggling and they get up to, let's say, like the last 3, normally the response is like, there's only 3 more. Come on, 3 more, 3 more, you can do it, blah, blah, blah. It's like they do that. It's like, it's only 2 more, 2 more. Come on, you can do it. Push through it, push through it. Next one, last one is you only got 1 more. It's only 1 more. It's only 1 more. They push through it and then it's all good. So yeah, it's like towards the end, you're just saying there's only 1 more. There's only 2 more. There's only 3 more, and
Yeah.
they're so much more likely to push through it as opposed to if you just kept saying you're on 7, you're on 7, you're like it doesn't even sound right. Like I don't even know trainers that do it like that. Come on, 7. It's 8. It's 8. Like we're just saying there's 1 left. There's 1 left. There's 2 left. There's 2 left. So yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you're saying.
Very interesting. There's another principle Cialdini mentioned that kind of relates to that, and that's the contrast principle. So they did a study where they had a bucket of water, and people would put their hand in and indicate whether it's cold or warm. So people who put their hand in, so there's two groups of people. One group of people, they put their hand in like very cold water, like ice water. Then they put their hand in the test water, and they said, oh yeah, it's warm. People who put their hand in a very warm bucket and then in the test bucket said, oh yeah, that's actually very warm. That water was quite warm. So and there's other examples of the contrast principle that he shared, but basically, I guess another one in fitness would be the way gyms sell memberships is they show a contrast between the someone else's before and after photo, right? So I think contrast is also quite powerful. And in this case, you're contrasting the 8 that you just did versus the 2 more that you got to do, right? And so the 8 that you just did, the 2 that you need to do compared to the 8 is nothing. You might as well finish it. But I had another question for you. So, Cialdini emphasizes that a lot of shortcut thinking is a survival tool and we humans have them. Modern humans, they don't automatically want to go get exercise. Whereas if you look at some other creatures, like, I don't know, dogs, they want to go for a walk. They want to go for a run. They want to go run around and get their exercise. And they get excited by it. For humans, what do you think our natural state is? Is a society that conditions us to not automatically want to get exercise and get excited by it, or do you think that's the natural state of a human?
I think it's got something to do with the path of least resistance.
Okay.
Like as a general rule, we always want to go, the easiest way to do it. Like you could even apply this to exercise itself. I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, let's just say you're doing, what's an exercise we can use for this? Say bench press. Say dumbbell bench press, that's a decent example because there's a few different muscles you can use or not necessarily saying you can completely exclude a muscle from it, but you can shift the exercise slightly to focus more on one muscle as opposed to another muscle. So example, if on a bench press, your triceps tend to do most of the work, you'll notice the technique looks a bit different because you're leaning towards the triceps doing most of the work on that exercise. Whereas people that naturally have big chests and they grow their chest very, very well, you'll see the way that they do the exercise just looks different. It's ever so slight, but if you know what to look for, you can see what the difference is. And so, for me, my triceps are much stronger in whenever I'm doing the bench press, they tend to do most of the work and you can see it. If you know what to look for, you can see it. So path of least resistance for me is pick up the dumbbells and just do them how I always do them. Use the tricep. But if I want to grow my chest more, I have to change up that technique completely. So I need to consciously tell myself, in a manner of speaking, we're not going in the path of least resistance. We're taking the hard path right now so that we can focus on the chest. And yeah, I think the reason a lot of people are lazy, I think it's got to do with conditioning. It's the path of least resistance. We don't really need to do anything. You know what I mean? Like assuming you've got a job and, stable income and enough to survive, it's just so much easier to, I'm here, I go to, the supermarket or whatever I need to. I could even order it and get it delivered now if I want. I don't really need to go do anything. Whereas, let's just say in nature, however many thousands of years ago, there was no option for me to just go to the store. I had to get up, get my spear, get my boys, let's go hunting. We got to go get it. Like there's no choice. I had to be physically active. Whereas today, let's just say, I don't know, pick a job. Let's just say I'm a manager in an office, whatever. I'm a manager in an office. What do I really need to do that's that physical? Drive up to work? Apart from that, what do I have to do? It's like get up and go to the photocopier and get up and go to the other room for a meeting. Like there's not really anything that's needed. And if I'm making decent money, I can just order food, come to my house. I don't really need to leave the house. I can do whatever I want from home. There's not really anything that needs to be done. Everything is like, how do we say? In a manner of speaking, it's optional. Like you don't have to go out and socialize. Like, it's not necessary. You're going to live if you don't go out and socialize, right? So if you're the type of person that you don't really want to do that, you can go the path of least resistance. There's no reason to leave the house. You're super lazy. And it's the same thing with exercise. If you don't have that ambition for looking better or whatever it may be, whatever reason you got for exercise, then it's definitely going to be easier staying at home. So I think it's societal conditioning to some degree. And I think it's just lifestyle in this day and age, like how easy life is in many different ways. Food's prepared. You don't even need to cook your own food if you don't want to. You've got Uber Eats. So yes, so much is done for you that you don't really need to do anything physical if you can justify for yourself there's a reason why not to do all of those physical things.
Interesting. That, however, makes me think, pets like dogs, they get everything taken care of for them. They get their food, they get everything. They still want to go for a run. They still want to go for a walk. They still want to go jump around. Why don't humans? Maybe it's our sort of intellect that rationalizes that I don't need to because I have everything taken care of me. Whereas the dog doesn't have the intellect, and so it just relies on its instincts, and one of them is go run around and stay in shape. Whereas for humans, maybe because of our intelligence, we do the math right in our head, and we're like, okay, well, I don't really need to spend energy in calories or kilojoules, whatever, running around for exercise, because the only reason I would need that is if I needed to go hunt. Well, I don't need to go hunt. Well, okay, so then I don't really need to go run around to stay in shape as much.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Someone's got to figure that out. It's a very, very interesting question. What is the natural state of human? Well, it seems like it's the natural state is to conserve time and conserve energy.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. Yeah. Back to the contrast principle, another one that I think fitness professionals could benefit from is, again, contrast principle as it relates to price. This could help with pricing, whether it's a new client or whether it's a retention client. So what a lot of stores do with pricing is, for example, they did a study in clothing stores where you go in, let's say a suit store, there's a salesman. If the salesman was to show you the lowest price suits and then show you the higher price suits, you might walk away not buying one. But they found that if they showed the most expensive suit first, which they would say no to most of the time, then they would be very likely to leave the store with having bought at least one cheaper suit. So that contrast principle applies to pricing as well. And I think trainers should use that more often. So, you offer a package, don't have just one package, have tiers, and then present the most expensive one first. And then if it's no, then okay, then switch to the cheaper one. How much is an online coaching program for, let's say, 3 months? About 500,000?
It depends who you go to. Yeah. For like 3 months, so it's like 12 weeks. Yeah, it depends who you go to. Like there's so many different, pricing tiers that I've seen in the past. And it depends on the amount of support that's offered as well. You see some of these apps out there, it'll be like, oh yeah, we'll give you a program for 3 months, and it's like $2 a month or something. But it could just be this generic program or whatever it may be. But then if you got someone where they're going to be, calling you 2, 3 times a week or whatever it is, it's probably going to be on the higher side. It could be 2, 3, 4,000 even. I think I've seen some even like 5 to 10,000, depending on what types of clients they're dealing with. Super high level CEOs and blah blah blah. So yeah, it depends, and yeah, it does make sense. Absolutely, it does make sense how different tiers start with a high one, because I remember it's like a sales tactic where you anchor in a price, and then everything's compared to that initial price. So if you say, this is 10 grand, but the one we're going to do, it's only 3 grand. They're like, oh wow, okay, well, at least it's not as bad as the first option. Yeah, I'm pretty sure from memory, from when I was doing like some sales training back in the day, they call it an anchor. So you anchor that in, and then start to go on the lower price, and then they can justify it to themselves a lot easier. So yeah, absolutely could be incorporated.
Interesting. Yeah, I just don't see it much. Yeah, another tactic that trainers could add to their toolkit to get better conversion. An interesting example Cialdini shared in the book was they did a study at an airport. I think it was a Delta flight or a Delta, some airport in the U.S. And so this was a Delta Airlines situation. They requested, because the plane was fully booked and had was at overcapacity. They requested customers to take the next flight for a small, like a voucher, right? But the guy announcing the amount of the venture, just to be funny and like get people to ease up and not be as angry about it, just to be funny and like lighten up the mood, he announced that we're going to give away a $10,000 voucher for whoever goes on the next flight. Yeah. So he thought that was funny, and everybody there thought it was funny. They all laughed. Everybody would kind of, it eased up the tension. But then afterwards, he announced the real price, the real amount of the voucher, $100. Nobody took the voucher. So it just goes to show how powerful that is. That anchoring principle, very, very powerful. And that you can not only apply to the pricing, but so many other things, right, within the program. Like, what would be another example where you could apply that anchoring principle in terms of the exercises that someone does?
Okay. So it's just like, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can see that being very effective. Nice. Okay. So that anchor principle, another one to keep in their toolkit. And just apply in various different ways. Yeah, I mean, Cialdini really makes a great point in that a lot of our behavior is automatic. A lot of our decision making is heuristics, especially in the modern world. And so for any compliance professional, like personal trainers, they really have to understand all these heuristics, all these mental models that their client, the average person, has ingrained in them, and learn how to manage them. So yeah, it was a really interesting chapter. Cialdini calls these principles sort of weapons of influence. So think of these as like weapons in your toolkit that you could apply to influence people, get them to comply to what's good for them. So that's it for chapter 1, which was actually called Weapons of Influence, with a bunch of examples. Was there anything else you wanted to cover, Andrew, or you think we covered enough to give trainers to walk away with a few new weapons of influence in their arsenal? Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll probably have to do another episode on that book, Atomic Habits, but we'll keep covering Cialdini's book. 6 more chapters to go, and each one of them I think deserves to have a deep dive and analyzed and related to how they can be applied to fitness. So we'll do that in the next episode. If anyone has any questions, feel free to contact us, or if you want to chat with us, or if you want to come on the podcast, feel free to connect with us. But we'll wrap it up here for chapter 1 of Cialdini's book and how it can be applied to fitness for both trainers and consumers. And we'll cover more in the next episode. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great day.